Welcome to the Manager's Toolkit. How to adapt your management style using the Management Center's Intelligent Leadership Model. Hello, and welcome to our video on tailoring your management style using our Intelligent Leadership Model. At the Management Center, we understand that deciding on an approach when managing people can be daunting. If you're a manager, you know how incredibly confusing it can feel when one method seems to work with some people, but not others. This is because one size really does not fit all. Adjusting your management style to suit any situation and what your team member needs is a great way to help you get the best from the people you manage. In this video, we'll show you how to do that using the Management Center's Intelligent Leadership Model. Intelligent Leadership Model Overview. This model depicts 4 different management styles over 2 variable behavior clusters. Let's take a moment to describe how this looks. We can imagine the 4 styles as 4 equal quarters of a circular dowel, a bit like a pie cut into 4 slices. Each slice represents one of the 4 management styles, which are directive, nurturing, encouraging, and empowering. Each of these quarter slices is represented by an arrow leading anti-clockwise to the next. So if we start from the bottom right quadrant, the directive style, this leads anti-clockwise to the nurturing style, followed by the encouraging style, and then on to the empowering style, and then finally back into the directive style. We'll go through each style in a moment. We then have 2 axes to consider. Imagine the circular dowel sits within a square, and the 2 parallel sides of the square represents 2 behavioral clusters, supportive and directive. Think of these as your axes, where the vertical axis Y represents supportive behavior, and the horizontal axis X represents directive behavior. The amount of each behavior needed varies along each axis. The vertical axis representing supportive behavior runs from low to high, where the lowest is at the bottom and the highest is at the top. The horizontal axis representing directive behavior runs from left to right, where left is the lowest and right is the highest. So where your management style sits on these axes will tell you how much support and direction you're going to need. In essence, the dial tells you where you're coming from and where you're going in terms of each management style needed, while the axis describes the behavior you need to use at each point. Let's consider our 2 behavior clusters. In the supportive cluster, along the y-axis, the manager's role is to be supportive and encouraging, which requires lots of two-way communications. This is not just about being nice. Our aim here is to enable people to develop their own solutions and involve them in decision making. The supportive cluster of behaviors recognizes each individual's unique needs. So this means asking questions to understand their perspective. Ultimately, this enables a more inclusive workplace by creating a safe environment for people to ask for the support that they need. The x-axis is the directive cluster of behavior. In this cluster, the manager's role is to be clear and unambiguous about their expectations. This is not about being bossy or controlling. Our aim here is to ensure team members understand what is required. Therefore, this mainly requires one-way communications. As the manager, you decide what needs to happen, the results that are needed, and to make the final decision. The directive cluster of behavior creates an environment in which your team knows what is expected in helpful and clear ways. This means giving your team the information that they need to complete the task you're asking them to do. In other words, they understand what they're being asked to do, how to do it, and why. Ultimately, this clarity of information helps people to prioritize their task, to learn, and to develop. When you give people the information that they need, you are setting them up for success. As a manager, we can choose to use any amount of directive or supportive behavior, and any combination of the two behaviors. The intelligent leadership model shares 4 different combinations you can choose from depending on the person and the situation. Your goal, of course, is to get the best out of the people that you manage. So let's start with the first choice of combining high directive behavior with low supportive behavior, otherwise known as the directing approach. This is the bottom right slice of our DAO. When using high directive behaviors, you'll be using mainly one-way communications to share what and how something needs to be done. You'll need to be clear and unambiguous in your instructions. In this situation, as the manager, you are taking full responsibility for deciding what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and by when. The responsibility of supervising and evaluating your colleagues' work and whether or not it meets the standards you set rests with you, the manager. This directing approach is effective in dangerous situations or an emergency. It could also be used in high-risk situations or situations with legal ramifications where there is only one way of completing a task. For example, during the induction of a new member of staff, you will need to tell them where the fire exit is and where the meeting point is if they should ever need to evacuate the building. You do not need to ask them where they think the meeting point should be. This new member of staff just needs to learn that this is how we do it in a crisis, and that the reason for this is the safety which is paramount and our first concern. A directive style is also helpful when your team member is doing something they haven't done before. You shouldn't expect or assume that they will know how you want a task completed, even if you've worked with them for years on other things. Always ask yourself, does this person have the information they need to know how to complete this task? The second style sits on the top right corner of the DAO. This approach involves using high levels of both directive and supportive behavior. We call this the nurturing approach. Let's consider some characteristics of nurturing. As we move towards a high level of supportive behavior, the nurturing leader will use more two-way communications and ask open questions. We're dialing up the support while keeping hold of our high dial of direction. This involves open questions. Using open questions helps you in 2 ways as a manager. Firstly, you can check the person's understanding of the task. And secondly, it verifies if the action that they want to take is aligned with the results that you're looking for. When the actions are aligned with the intended results, you can and should give lots of support and praise. When the actions deviate from the intended results, you will be able to go back to a more directive behavior through course correction by giving clear advice and guidance. Again, this is all about setting your team up for success. Consequently, as part of the high directive behavior, you're also evaluating the results that your team member produces. The nurturing approach is helpful in situations where people still need lots of direction as well as support to build their confidence. or in situations where there are several ways to do something. For example, you manage Alice, who is a few months into their new role, and you'd like them to start making a grant application due in a few months. A task you know they have only done a few times before, under your direct supervision. You might start by asking them an open question such as, Alice, can you tell me what you'll be doing to prepare for the application? As Alice describes the process, you give them lots of praise for things that they're doing well. However, if Alice makes a mistake in the process or misunderstands why a step is needed, you will need to correct them and give them the correct information. Always ask yourself, does this person have the information they need to know how to complete the task? If not, do they know where to look for it? Perhaps a how-to guide, perhaps asking a particular colleague. Have you checked their understanding and clarified what they intend to do? The third choice involves a lowering of our dial on directive behavior whilst keeping our high level of supportive behavior. We call this the encouraging approach. Here are some characteristics of the encouraging approach. With a high level of supportive behavior, we continue to communicate in two directions and use open questions, but in a different way to the nurturing style. In this instance, we're using these open questions to help people to find their own solutions and reach their own conclusion, rather than focusing on the actions that they're taking. With high supportive behavior, we're encouraging them to come up with solutions, initiatives, making their own decision, and also evaluating their work for themselves. In so doing, we provide a safe and supportive work environment for people to learn their own way. The encouraging approach is helpful in situations where we know the other person is able to carry out the task. However, they might have low confidence because they feel they need more practice or because they're being stretched. We can use our support and encouragement skills to help them build their confidence. For example, you manage Sunil, a fundraiser who is great at managing corporate sponsors. Prior to the campaign, Sunil says they feel unsure and ask you for your advice on what they might need to do in order to manage those relationships. You know that Sunil has the capability to do that on their own, so you might say something along the lines of, Sunil, for the past year, I've noticed that you have been great at managing this relationship. What has helped you with that? How might that help with the new campaign? What else could you consider? What would you like from me to help you with that? Crucially, you're giving praise but not giving answers or solutions. You're letting Sunil figure out for themselves. Meanwhile, you play the role of a coach to guide them to their own answers. At the end of the campaign, you can ask Sunil how they thought it went, and in so doing, continue to increase their confidence. The fourth choice involves a combination of a low level of directive and supportive behavior. We're now at the bottom left of the dial. Bear in mind that these dials are turned down but not turned off. We call this the empowering approach. Here are some characteristics of an empowering approach. With a low level of directive behavior, we allow the other person to determine how something will be done, but this means we also need to accept their decision. With a low level of supportive behavior, we allow them to evaluate their own work rather than to support them through the process of evaluation. The success of the empowering approach also means that we'll need to give credit where credit is due, The empowering approach is helpful in situations where we trust the other person will deliver high quality results, as they're both competent and confident in the task. For example, you manage Charlie, an experienced volunteer manager. On a new volunteer recruitment campaign, you put Charlie in charge and tell them, Charlie, I have absolute faith that you're going to smash this one out of the park. Let me know how you get on. We'll catch up in a couple of weeks, but in the meantime, if you need me, you'll know where to find me. In this scenario, you're not disappearing, never to be seen again. Instead, the onus is on Charlie to flag if they need help between the agreed checkpoints. That's it. What we've just seen are the 4 styles that you can adopt based on the situation and the person. Take some time to think about the people that you're working with and which approach would be most appropriate to the situation. What are their needs when it comes to delivering the results required? Why is that? What behaviors do you need to get the best out of them? If you have a question about the Intelligent Leadership Model or any other management tool, then do get in touch. We'll love to hear from you. Our direct line phone and email address are on the screen, and I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching.